A Democratic congressman from Michigan has introduced articles of impeachment against President Donald Trump. I'm Andrew Rafferty in Washington, and this is On the Scene. Representative Shuri Tanadar says Trump, quote, repeatedly demonstrated that he is unfit to serve as president and represents a clear and present danger to our nation's Constitution. Tanadar cites unlawful deportations, Trump's tariff policies, and DOJ's dismantling of federal agencies among his evidence. But with Democrats in the minority in the House of Representatives, this effort won't go far. Trump was impeached twice in his first term, but never removed from office.
Hold on to your seats, because Donald Trump just had what news outlets are calling a full meltdown after a bombshell GOP impeachment letter went public. And the political explosion in Washington is unlike anything we've seen in months. We're talking about a complete nuclear reaction from Trump after learning that some Republican lawmakers, yes, his own party members, are now circulating and even supporting impeachment resolutions, targeting him for alleged high crimes and misdemeanors. The most prominent effort, House Resolution 537, was formally introduced on June 24, 2025, and it accuses Trump of abusing presidential powers by usurping Congress's authority in matters of war. But what really sent Trump over the edge was when Representative Jamie Raskin sent him a sharply worded 6-page letter on November 12, 2025, urging accountability and transparency for actions taken in defiance of the checks and balances the founders intended for this office. Trump's response was immediate, visceral, and completely unhinged. He took to social media with an all-caps barrage of posts denouncing traitors, witch hunts, and claiming this is the greatest political persecution in American history. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest, you can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us. Be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
How concerned is he about impeachment if they get him to take the majority?
Well, we've already seen this movie. They've already tried it twice. I'm certain they would try it again.
President Trump won't be on the ticket in the 2026 midterms, so GOP leaders are discussing ways to turn out the MAGA faithful. One way to do that, talk up the prospects that Trump could be impeached for a record third time if Democrats take back the House, even though Democratic leaders are so far wary of doing so. My new reporting this morning with my colleague Sarah Ferris details how Trump and GOP leaders are plotting their midterm strategy, trying to woo key candidates, including Governor Brian Kemp for a Georgia Senate run. But not all Republicans think the strategy of talking up a potential Trump impeachment is enough to win.
The sheer intensity of Trump's reaction tells you everything you need to know about how serious this impeachment threat really is. We're not talking about Democrats going through the motions with another symbolic impeachment effort that everyone knows will go nowhere. We're talking about actual Republican members of Congress publicly considering whether Trump has finally gone too far and needs to be held accountable. The fact that GOP lawmakers are even entertaining these impeachment resolutions represents a seismic shift in the political landscape. Trump went absolutely ballistic, calling out specific Republicans by name, threatening primary challenges, and essentially declaring war on anyone in his own party who dares to support these accountability measures. His social media posts were so inflammatory that several platforms had to review them for potential violations of their terms of service regarding threats and intimidation. What makes this moment so explosive is the timing and the context surrounding it. We're heading into the 2026 midterm elections, and Republicans are increasingly worried that Trump's legal troubles and authoritarian behavior are becoming an albatross around their necks. The House Judiciary Committee and political commentators are highlighting how this impeachment debate is creating massive rifts within the GOP, with some Republicans seeing it as a necessary reckoning while others are circling the wagons around Trump. The leaked letters and private conversations suggest that far more Republicans are considering supporting impeachment than are willing to say so publicly, creating a powder keg situation where Trump doesn't know who he can trust within his own party. This isn't just another political scandal. This is a full-blown constitutional crisis that's tearing the Republican Party apart from the inside. Let's really examine what's in these impeachment resolutions and why they're causing such panic in Trump's camp. House Resolution 537 specifically targets Trump for high crimes and misdemeanors centered on his abuse of power by usurping Congress's war authority. This isn't some vague accusation. The resolution lays out specific instances where Trump allegedly violated the Constitution by taking military actions without congressional authorization, threatening to use military force against political opponents, and treating the armed forces as his personal army rather than a tool of national defense. The resolution cites chapter and verse of constitutional violations, making it much harder for Republicans to dismiss it as partisan nonsense. When you read through the detailed charges, it becomes clear why Trump is so terrified. This isn't just political theater. It's a serious legal document that could form the basis for actual impeachment proceedings. Representative Jamie Raskin's 6-page letter adds another devastating layer to this impeachment push. Raskin, who's a constitutional law professor and one of the sharpest legal minds in Congress, methodically dismantles Trump's claims to executive privilege and unlimited presidential power. He writes about how Trump has systematically violated the separation of powers, ignored congressional subpoenas, and treated the presidency as a personal fiefdom rather than a public trust. The letter isn't just angry rhetoric. It's a carefully constructed legal argument that lays the groundwork for impeachment articles. Raskin specifically calls out Trump's attempts to use emergency powers to bypass Congress, his threats against political opponents, and his ongoing efforts to undermine democratic institutions. When Trump read this letter, he must have realized that his opponents aren't just making political attacks, they're building a legitimate legal case against him. The response from other members of Congress has been fascinating and reveals just how volatile this situation has become. Democrats are obviously supportive of the impeachment efforts, but they're being strategic about not making this seem like a purely partisan exercise. They're actively courting Republican support, offering to modify language in the resolutions to address GOP concerns, and emphasizing that this is about defending congressional prerogatives rather than partisan politics. Meanwhile, Republicans are deeply divided. Some are publicly defending Trump and calling the impeachment efforts a distraction, while others are privately admitting that Trump's behavior has become indefensible. Political analysts are reporting that there are secret meetings happening among Republican lawmakers to discuss what to do if the impeachment resolutions gain momentum. The specific allegations in these impeachment resolutions go beyond just abstract constitutional violations. They include concrete examples of Trump's alleged crimes and abuses of power. There are accusations that Trump illegally redirected funds appropriated by Congress, that he used federal resources for personal political gain, that he obstructed justice by interfering with ongoing investigations, and that he violated his oath of office by attempting to subvert democratic elections. Each of these charges is supported by evidence, witness testimony, and documentation that makes them hard to simply dismiss. The resolution also includes newer allegations related to Trump's recent actions, including his attempts to invoke emergency powers without justification and his threats against members of Congress who oppose him. This comprehensive approach makes it clear that impeachment supporters are serious about holding Trump accountable for the full range of his alleged misconduct. The political implications of this renewed impeachment push are absolutely staggering and could reshape American politics for years to come. If Republicans actually join Democrats in supporting impeachment, it would represent a complete collapse of Trump's political power and influence. The GOP has been essentially held hostage by Trump and his base for years, afraid to criticize him for fear of primary challenges and political retribution. But if enough Republicans decide that Trump has become more of a liability than an asset, we could see a dramatic shift in the party's direction. The 2026 midterms are looming large in these calculations. Republicans are looking at polling data showing that suburban voters, independents, and even some traditional Republicans are exhausted by Trump's chaos and want the party to move in a different direction. Trump's meltdown response to these impeachment efforts is actually making his situation worse by alienating potential allies and confirming his critics' worst fears about his temperament and fitness for office. His social media tirades attacking fellow Republicans as traitors and threatening retribution against anyone who supports impeachment are exactly the kind of behavior that the impeachment resolutions cite as evidence of his unfitness. Every unhinged post, every threat against lawmakers, every call for his supporters to rise up against the deep state. It all becomes evidence that could be used in impeachment proceedings. Trump seems incapable of controlling himself, even when his political survival depends on it, and this lack of self-control is terrifying even some of his longtime supporters. The role of moderate Republicans in this impeachment drama deserves special attention because they hold the key to whether these efforts succeed or fail. Senators like Susan Collins, Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski, and others who've occasionally criticized Trump are under enormous pressure to take a stand. If they support impeachment, it gives cover to other Republicans to follow suit. If they oppose it, the effort probably dies. These moderates are doing complex political calculations. They know their states have significant numbers of voters who despise Trump, but they also know that Trump's base remains powerful and vindictive. The fact that we're even having conversations about Republicans supporting impeachment shows how much Trump's standing has deteriorated within his own party. The constitutional and historical significance of this moment cannot be overstated. We're potentially looking at the first president in American history to face serious impeachment efforts from his own party. Even Nixon, facing certain impeachment and removal, had defenders within the GOP until the very end. But Trump's behavior has been so egregious, so destructive to democratic norms, that even Republicans are saying enough is enough. If this impeachment effort succeeds, it would send a powerful message that there are limits to what presidents can do, that the rule of law still matters, and that Congress will defend its constitutional role even against a president from the same party. The media coverage of this impeachment drama is intense and will only grow more fevered as the story develops. Every news outlet is covering Trump's meltdown, analyzing the impeachment resolutions, and speculating about vote counts in Congress. Cable news is wall-to-wall coverage of the latest developments, with legal experts explaining the constitutional issues and political analysts handicapping the chances of success. Social media is on fire, with supporters and opponents of impeachment battling it out in real time. This media attention creates its own momentum. The more coverage the impeachment efforts get, the more pressure builds on lawmakers to take a position. Looking at the practical mechanics of how this impeachment process would work, there are several possible scenarios that could unfold. If the House Judiciary Committee decides to move forward with hearings, we could see weeks or months of testimony from witnesses detailing Trump's alleged crimes and abuses of power. This would keep the story in the headlines and could gradually build public support for impeachment. Alternatively, if enough Republicans signal opposition, Democratic leadership might decide not to proceed, calculating that a failed impeachment effort would only strengthen Trump. There's also the possibility of a compromise where Congress passes resolutions of censure or other measures short of impeachment that still express disapproval of Trump's actions. The international implications of this impeachment crisis are significant and often overlooked. America's allies and adversaries are watching closely to see whether our democratic institutions can hold a lawless president accountable. If impeachment proceeds, it signals that American democracy remains capable of self-correction. If it fails, it suggests that presidents can act with impunity as long as they maintain partisan support. This has huge implications for America's global leadership and our ability to promote democracy and human rights abroad. How can we criticize authoritarian leaders in other countries if we can't hold our own leaders accountable for abusing power? As we watch this impeachment drama unfold, it's crucial to remember what's really at stake here. This isn't just about Donald Trump or partisan politics. It's about whether we're going to have a constitutional democracy where no one is above the law, or whether we're going to allow presidents to accumulate unlimited power as long as they maintain political support. The impeachment resolutions cite specific violations of law and constitutional norms that, if left unchecked, would fundamentally transform the nature of American government. Every member of Congress will have to decide whether they're going to uphold their oath to defend the Constitution or whether they're going to prioritize political expedience. The coming weeks and months will be absolutely critical in determining whether these impeachment efforts gain momentum or fizzle out. Trump will undoubtedly continue his attacks on anyone who supports accountability, potentially escalating his rhetoric and calls for resistance. Republicans will have to decide whether they're willing to endure his wrath in order to defend constitutional principles. Democrats will have to navigate the politics carefully, building bipartisan support without appearing overly partisan. And the American people will have to decide whether they want their representatives to hold Trump accountable or whether they're tired of impeachment battles. Whatever happens, this moment will be remembered as a crucial test of American democracy's ability to constrain power and enforce the rule of law. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the outcome will shape our politics for generations to come.